It was past midnight, and the rain was falling hard. The street outside was quiet, except for the sound of water splashing in the drains. Inside his small house, John was sitting on the couch, reading an old book. The lights were dim, and the air was cold. Then came the knock, slow at first, but heavy. Like someone hitting the door with a stone. He froze for a second, his fingers tightening on the book. Nobody visited him this late, not in this lonely part of town. The knock came. Again, louder this time. John stood, his heart beating faster, and walked to the door. When he opened it, the rain poured in, soaking the floor. And standing there was something he would never forget. The figure was tall, almost touching the top of the doorway. His skin was silver, like polished metal, and his hair was long and black but moved like liquid. The alien's eyes glowed faintly blue. Staring at John without blinking, in his arms, he held a woman, but she was not like him. She was smaller, thinner, and her skin was pale with strange glowing lines under it. Her clothes were torn, and she looked weak, like she had been running for days. The alien's voice was deep, like thunder rolling through a cave. "She is not mine anymore," he said, each word slow and heavy. "She is dirty heritage." He stepped forward, placing her gently on the ground in front of John. John could only stare, confused and shocked. Before he could say a word, the alien turned and walked into the rain. His long black hair swayed like smoke, and in seconds he disappeared into the darkness. The woman looked up at John, her eyes wide and frightened. She whispered something, but the rain drowned it out. John bent down, trying to hear her please. "Don't send me back," she said, her voice trembling. Now John didn't understand what dirty heritage meant, but he could see she was cold, wet, and scared. Without thinking too much, he took her hand and led her inside. The warmth of the house seemed to make her shiver more. She stood in the middle of the room, looking around like she was in a strange world. John brought her a blanket and wrapped it around her shoulders. She sat down slowly, her eyes darting to the window as if expecting someone to break in. "Who was that?" John asked softly. She didn't answer. Her gaze stayed fixed on the rain outside. John noticed the faint glow under her skin, tiny lines moving like they were alive. They pulsed in slow rhythm, like a heartbeat. It was beautiful but strange. When she caught him staring, she pulled the blanket tighter around herself. "Don't tell them you saw this," she said in a whisper. Her voice was low, but there was a sharp edge to it. John wanted to ask who them was, but something in her eyes told him not to push. The rain kept falling outside, and the clock ticked softly. John made her a cup of tea. When he placed it in front of her, she held it with both hands. As if the warmth was the only thing keeping her alive, he noticed small scars on her wrists, thin and pale, almost hidden under the glowing lines. The air between them was heavy, filled with questions he didn't know how to ask. Finally, she had looked up at him, her voice barely audible. "They don't like people like me," she said. John frowned. "People like you?" She shook her head, half-blood. The word hung in the air like a shadow. Before John could say anything, a faint humming filled the room. It was coming from her. A sound like hidden machinery deep inside her body. It rose and fell slowly. Almost like music, John felt the hairs on his arms stand up. "What is that?" he asked. She only whispered, "Don't open the door if they come back." John realized his night had just changed forever. He didn't know who she was, or why an alien would abandon her at his door. But he could feel it. Whatever this was, it was dangerous. And somewhere in the darkness outside, he thought he saw a faint blue glow, moving slowly down the street. Watching, waiting. The house was quiet, but John could not sleep. The woman was in the guest room, the door closed. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, hearing the rain slowly fade outside. Yet in the silence, another sound began. It was faint at first, like a soft electric hum. Then it grew deep and steady, pulsing in the air like a strange heartbeat. It was coming from her room. John turned his head toward the hallway, holding his breath. The hum was not like any machine. He knew it had a strange rhythm, almost alive, and beneath it, he thought he heard a soft whisper, not words, but a sound like air moving through metal. He got up, the wooden floor cold under his feet. Every step he took toward her room made the humming clearer. It was mixed with a faint blue light coming from under the door. John hesitated, then slowly pushed it open. The woman was lying on the bed, eyes closed, but her skin was glowing. The thin lines under it, moving like streams of liquid fire, they shifted across her arms, her neck, and even her face. It was beautiful, but unnatural. The glow pulsed with the hum, in perfect timing. Then her eyes snapped open.
Always.
John froze, caught. Staring, she sat up quickly, the glow dimming as if it was hiding. "Do not tell them you saw this," she said sharply. Her voice was stronger than before, almost commanding. John wanted to ask who them was, but her eyes stopped him. They were not just scared, they were warning him. He stepped back slowly, nodding. She lay down again. Pulling the blanket over herself, the hum grew quieter until it was gone. John closed the door, but the image of those moving lights stayed in his mind. He returned to his room, though sleep was impossible now, somewhere far away. He thought he heard a low rumble in the sky. It could have been thunder, but it felt heavier, like an engine, like a ship. The next morning, the sun barely broke through the thick clouds. John found her sitting at the kitchen table, the blanket still around her shoulders. She was staring at the small TV in the corner. The news was on, showing grainy images of alien patrol ships scanning the lower districts. "Heritage cleansing operations have begun," the voice on the TV said. John's stomach tightened at the words. The woman's grip on the blanket tightened, her eyes locked on the screen. She turned to him slowly. "You shouldn't let them see me," she said. He asked what dirty heritage meant. She looked down, avoiding his eyes. Finally she spoke. "I am not fully like them, half human." John didn't know whether to be shocked or curious. He had heard stories, old ones about human blood mixing with alien. But most of those stories ended badly. Aliens considered humans weaker, slower. Mixing the two was something they called a contamination, but he had never met someone who lived through it. "You're saying that alien? He was your husband?" John asked. Her jaw tightened. By force, she glanced at the door. As if expecting it to open any second. "He married me because of what I carry," she said. John frowned. "And what's that?" She didn't answer. Instead, she whispered, "They will come." The hum from last night seemed to echo in his mind. It was strange, how she could look so fragile and yet make the air feel heavy. John wanted to help her, but a voice inside him warned. This was bigger than anything he understood. Then a sound outside made them both freeze, a low, sharp whistle. It was the kind of sound that didn't belong to the wind or the birds. It was mechanical, precise. The woman's eyes widened. She moved quickly, grabbing John's hand and pulling him toward the back of the house. "They are searching," she said, before he could ask who. She pulled him into the storage room. From there, she crouched and slid open a panel in the floor. Beneath it was a narrow, dark space, John realized. It had been there the whole time, hidden under his house. She motioned for him to get in. He hesitated. "Why would I hide?" "They're after you, not me." Her voice turned cold. "Once they see you with me, you will be after them too." That was enough for him to step inside. They crouched together in the dark, the only light coming from the faint glow of her skin. Above them, the whistle sound grew closer. Then came a low hum, not from her, but from outside. A shadow passed over the small gap in the wall. Someone was walking above. A deep voice spoke in alien language. Another answered, closer this time, then silence. They stayed there, not moving, barely breathing. Finally, the sound of footsteps faded away. The woman exhaled. "Next time, they will come inside," John stared at her in the dim glow. He wanted answers, but he could see she was not ready to give them. Somewhere outside in the gray morning light, an alien patrol ship hovered for a moment, then moved on. But John had the feeling it was not gone. It was waiting, watching. The day felt colder than it should. Clouds covered the sky, and the streets outside were empty. John sat across from her at the kitchen table, a cup of coffee warming his hands. She sat with the blanket still around her shoulders, staring at the steam rising from her tea. Her eyes looked far away, like she was seeing something not in this room for a long time. Neither of them spoke. Finally, John asked, "Who were those men yesterday?" She didn't look at him. "Not men," she said quietly. "Hunters." Her voice had no emotion. But her hands were trembling under the blanket. John wanted to push her for answers, but he could feel her holding something back. He had seen that look before in soldiers who had returned from war, people who carried too much pain to speak of it. Still, he needed to know. "They were looking for you, weren't they?" he asked. She finally raised her eyes to his. "Yes," she said, "and they will keep looking." Her tone made him uneasy, as if she knew exactly how far they would go. The TV in the corner flickered with a news report, images of alien patrol. Ships appeared, scanning streets. The words "heritage cleansing" filled the screen.
Us.
John glanced at her and saw her flinch at the words. She reached out suddenly and switched off the TV. "I don't want to see it," she said, her voice cracked, but she kept her eyes steady. John leaned forward. "You keep saying dirty heritage and half human, but I still don't understand." She took a long breath, as if deciding. "How much to tell him? My mother was human," she said. "My father was alien." The words were simple, but they hung in the air like a heavy weight. "The alien families think human blood makes us less," she added, "and for them, less means dangerous." John frowned. "Dangerous? Why?" She hesitated, looking down at her glowing hands. "The mix makes us different," she said. "Stronger in some ways, weaker in others, but unpredictable. And the alien rulers hate anything they can't control." She lifted her eyes again, and there was something fierce in them now. "They call us dirty heritage because we don't belong fully to either world," John felt. A chill. "But that man, the one who left you here, was he really your husband?" Her jaw tightened. "Yes, but not by choice." She stood up suddenly, walking to the window outside. The street was still quiet. "I was forced into it," she said, "because of what I carry." Her hand moved to her stomach without thinking. John's breath caught. "You're pregnant," he said slowly. She turned sharply, eyes narrowing. "Yes," she said, "and that is why they want me dead." John sat frozen, his mind trying to understand. "They don't want the child to be born," she continued. "He would be like me." The hum of an alien engine passed faintly in the distance. She went quiet, her eyes scanning the gray sky through the window. John followed her gaze. A small dot moved between the clouds. An alien patrol ship she stepped back from. "The glass? They are looking for signals," she said. "What kind of signals?" John asked. "Anything?" "From me," she replied. Her tone was strange, almost guilty that night. The wind howled outside. John had given her the guest room again, but he could not rest. Around midnight, he heard her walking in the hallway. He got up quietly and followed. She was standing by the front door, her hand on the lock. "What are you doing?" John asked. She didn't turn around. "They're getting closer," she said. "If I stay here, they will find you too." Her voice was calm, but her shoulders were tense. "I'm not letting you walk out there alone," John said firmly. She finally turned, her glowing eyes softer now. "I don't want you hurt because of me," she said. "Too late," he answered. "You left me no choice when you knocked on my door." For a moment, neither of them moved. Then a sharp flash of light lit up the room. John rushed to the window. A blue search beam swept across the street. It was coming from above. The patrol ship was moving slowly, scanning the ground. She pulled him away from the window. "They can't see us, but they can hear," she whispered. The hum from the ship grew louder. Then the blue light passed. Directly over the house, John held his breath. Seconds later, it moved on, disappearing behind the trees. But deep inside, both of them knew it was not over. It was only a matter of time. The rain had returned by morning. It fell in thin, cold lines across the window glass. John was in the kitchen, making tea. The woman sat quietly at the table, her hands wrapped around the cup. Neither of them spoke much. It had been 3 days since the patrol ship passed over the house. Each night, the sound of engines in the distance kept them awake. But nothing had happened. Not yet. John almost began to believe they were safe. Then came the knock. It was slow, deliberate, the kind of knock that made the air feel heavier. John froze with the teapot still in his hand. The woman's eyes widened. Instantly, she shook her head, whispering, "Don't answer." But the knock came again. Louder this time. John's hand trembled as he set the teapot down. He moved to the door quietly. Through the small crack in the curtain he saw him, the tall, silver-skinned alien, standing in the rain. His long black hair clung to his shoulders, his glowing blue eyes fixed on the door. He wasn't wet. The rain seemed to slide off him, unnaturally, and in that moment, John knew this was not a casual visit. Before John could move away, the alien spoke, his voice deep and slow. "I know she is here." The words cut through the rain like a blade. John's heartbeat quickened. "She will destroy you," the alien continued. "She will destroy everything you love." John stayed silent. The woman stood in the hallway, her face pale but her eyes sharp. She shook her head at him again, mouthing, "Don't, da-da-da." The alien's hand moved to the door, pressing against it for a moment. John thought he would break it down, but instead he leaned closer, his voice almost a whisper now.
"Ow."
"She is not what you think." Then he stepped back, looking up at the gray sky. "She carries something that belongs to us." John's breath caught. The alien's gaze returned to the door. "She is dangerous because she is incomplete," he said, "and what grows inside her will finish her." John's hand tightened on the edge of the doorframe. The alien turned slowly and began to walk away. His figure faded into the rain, his hair trailing like smoke. John stayed still for a moment, listening to the sound of the rain and his own pounding heart. When he turned back, the woman was gone. He found her upstairs in the attic. Crouched in the far corner, she was shaking, her blanket pulled tightly around her. "You heard him," John said. Her eyes flashed with anger. "He lies," she said. "Everything he says is to make you turn on me." John sat on the floor, across from her. "Then tell me the truth," he said. She looked away, finally. Her voice came low and unsteady. "The child is not his." John's eyes widened. "Then whose is it?" She hesitated, then whispered, "It's human." The words hit him like a cold wave. John stared, struggling to process. "That's why they want you," he said slowly. She nodded, her eyes wet, but her voice steady. "They fear what they cannot control, and a child like this. It could unite humans again." A low rumble shook the roof. John froze. Recognizing the sound instantly, the alien's ship moved to the small attic window, peeking out. Through the rain, he saw a tall, dark shape beyond the trees. Blue lights glowed faintly at its base. It wasn't moving. It was waiting. "They'll come tonight," she said, her voice hollow. John turned to her. "Then we can't be here when they do." But she shook her head. "They will track me anywhere I go, John. The only thing they fear is what's inside me." For the rest of the day, they prepared in silence. John found an old hunting knife, a flashlight, and a battered backpack. The woman sat in the corner, her hand resting on her stomach. Outside, the rain never stopped. By evening, the hum of the alien ship grew louder. Lights flickered in the trees, casting long shadows across the house. John stood by the front door, the knife in his hand. The woman stood behind him. "They will not kill you," she said quietly. "If you give me to them." John turned sharply. "Not happening," he said. Her eyes softened for the first time. "You don't even know me," she whispered. "I know enough," he replied. A sudden crash of metal echoed outside. John flinched, looking toward the sound. Through the window, a dark figure moved between the trees. It was the alien man, and he wasn't alone. Two more figures followed him, their armor glowing faintly blue. The woman's hand gripped John's arm. "They won't ask this time," she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes betrayed the fear. John took a deep breath. If this was the night they came for her, then this was the night he would stand between them. The first sound was the hum. It was low at first, almost like distant thunder. Then it grew deep and steady, vibrating through the floor. John stood in the hallway, gripping the knife. The woman was behind him, her hand clutching the blanket. Around her shoulders, outside, faint blue lights flickered between the trees. Shadows moved, tall and slow. They were getting closer. John's heartbeat matched the rhythm of the hum. He could feel it in his chest. The front door rattled once. Then again, "They're here," she whispered. Her voice was steady, but her eyes said something else. Fear. John grabbed the backpack, throwing it over his shoulder. "Back door." "Now," he said. They moved quickly through the kitchen. The rain outside hit their faces as they stepped into the night. The cold air felt sharp, almost metallic. The hum was louder now, joined by the hiss of engines overhead. A searchlight burst. Through the clouds, sweeping across the ground, John grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the tree line. The light passed over the house, pausing for a moment, then it swung toward them. "Run," he said. They dashed into the woods, their feet splashing through wet leaves and mud. The beam followed, slicing through the trees. The sound of alien voices carried through the rain. They weren't shouting. They were speaking into comes, calm, efficient, hunting. The woman stumbled. But John pulled her up. Her glowing lines flared faintly under her skin. "Cover that," he said. She pulled the blanket tighter, behind them. The hum shifted in pitch. The ship was descending. Branches snapped. The air shook. "They'll land," she said. "They'll bring ground hunters." John pushed forward. Searching for a break in the trees, the rain made it hard to see. Then, through the darkness, he spotted a faint glimmer of metal. A fence, rusted and bent. They reached it, climbing. Over quickly on the other side was a slope leading down into a dark, open field. The hum faded slightly as the trees blocked the sound. But above the field, another light appeared, smaller, sharper, moving fast. A drone, it zipped over them. Scanning with a thin red beam, John swung the knife at it. Hitting the side, sparks flew, and it spun wildly before crashing into the wet grass. The woman grabbed his arm, pulling him toward the far end of the field. "There's a place," she said, breathing hard. "It's an old shelter from the war." They ran until the field ended, where a line of rocks formed a low ridge. Hidden between two boulders was a narrow opening. She crouched, pulling aside a slab of stone, revealing a dark tunnel. "In," she said. John followed without hesitation. The tunnel was cold and smelled of rust. Their footsteps echoed softly as they moved deeper. The sound of the rain faded, replaced by a hollow stillness. John's flashlight cut through the dark, revealing old metal walls and pipes. Symbols were painted on them, faded but human. "This is from the first human resistance," she said quietly. Her voice carried a strange pride. John looked at her. "You've been here before?" She nodded. "My mother brought me once. When I was small," she said one day, "humans would need these places again." They reached a wide chamber filled with broken crates and dust. In the center was a large, circular device, covered in a tarp. The woman pulled it away, revealing a metallic console with a cracked screen. It was old, but still humming faintly. She placed her hand on it. The glowing lines under her skin pulsed, and the console lit up. John stepped back. "What is that?" She smiled faintly. "A memory core. It holds data from before the surrender." The console projected a small, flickering hologram. It showed maps, alien troop movements, and lists of human resistance names. "This is why they fear us," she said. "Humans lost the war, but we didn't lose our history. And with this, we can find the ones who still fight." John felt a strange pull in his chest. Pride, anger, hope. But before he could speak, the hum returned, louder than ever. It echoed down the tunnel. "They found us." "Right," she said. Her eyes glowed. Brighter now, John tightened his grip on the knife for the first time. He realized running wasn't enough anymore. If they wanted to survive, they would have to fight. The hum in the tunnel grew heavier. It was no longer distant. It was crawling through the walls. John could feel it in the floor beneath his boots. The woman stood by the glowing console, her hands still pressed against it. The blue light from her skin mixed with the green flicker of the hologram. Shadows danced across the dusty chamber walls. "They're close," she said quietly. John moved toward the tunnel entrance, gripping his knife tighter. The air was damp, the sound of water, dripping somewhere deep in the shelter. It felt like the walls themselves were holding their breath. A sharp, metallic crack echoed down the tunnel. It was the sound of armor scraping against stone. Then a faint beam of blue light swept across the floor. John stepped back into the shadows. "They're sending scouts first," she whispered. Her voice had no fear now, only certainty. John glanced at her. "You've been hunted before," he said. She nodded slowly. All my life the hum grew sharper. Like a blade being drawn from the tunnel came a figure tall, armored, with glowing blue eyes. It moved with slow precision, scanning every corner. John held his breath as the beam passed over the crates. The woman stepped forward suddenly. Her glow brightening, the scout froze. Its armor flickered with strange light. Like static, John didn't understand what was happening. Then the scout dropped to one knee, its weapon sparking. She turned to John. "Half-bloods can disrupt them," she said. "It's the one thing they can't defend against." Before John could speak, two more figures entered. The first aimed its weapon. John lunged forward. Slamming the knife into the joint of its armor, sparks burst as the alien staggered. The woman's glow flared, and the second scout's helmet shorted out. It fell backward, twitching, but the didn't stop. It grew louder, deeper. The main force was coming. She ran back to the console, her hands moving across its cracked surface. The hologram changed, showing a map with glowing red points. "These are human resistance cells," she said. "They're scattered, but if I send a signal, they'll know where we are." John looked at her like she was crazy. "That'll bring them here," he said. She met his eyes there. "Coming anyway?" John hesitated, the knife still warm in his hand. "Then what happens?" He asked. "We fight," she said. The first blast hit the entrance like thunder. Stone and dust rained from the ceiling. John coughed, pulling her back from the collapsing wall. A deep, cold voice called from outside. "Give her to us, and we will let you live." It was the silver-skinned alien. John's hands tightened into fists. "Not happening," he muttered. The woman's eyes locked on his. "This is your choice, John," she said. "You can walk away now, and you might survive, or you can stay, and you will change everything." The tunnel shook again. Alien soldiers began pouring in, their weapons glowing in the dark. John took a deep breath. He stepped forward. Knife in one hand, flashlight in the other, the woman's glow intensified. Bathing the chamber in light, the first soldier hesitated. Blinded by the flare, John lunged, driving the blade into its chest plate. She moved beside him, her touch sending shockwaves through their armor. Each one that fell twitched and sparked like broken machines, the air filled with the smell of metal and ozone. The alien leader stepped into view at the far end, his blue eyes locked on the woman. "You are nothing," he said. She straightened, her glow pulsing like a heartbeat. "I am the future," she replied. John felt something shift in the room. The hum was no longer theirs, it was hers. The walls seemed to respond. The console's lights flaring, the hologram expanded, filling the chamber with red lines and human symbols. Somewhere deep inside the system, a signal burst into the air. Carrying their location to every human resistance cell still alive, the alien leader stepped forward, but his movements slowed. Like he was pushing through water, the glow around her spread into the walls, the floor, even the air, John realized. She wasn't just fighting them, she was controlling the old human tech. One by one, the soldiers froze, their armor shutting down. The chamber fell silent, except for the steady hum. Her hum. She turned to John, her breathing heavy. "They'll come in greater numbers now," she said, "but so will we." John nodded slowly. He knew his life had just split into two parts. Before this night, and after, and there was no going back. The shelter was silent now. The hum had faded into a soft, steady vibration deep in the walls. The alien soldiers lay scattered across the floor, their armor cracked and smoking. The air smelled of rain, metal, and something strange like burning air. John stood with his back against the wall, his chest rising and falling with each breath. Across the room, she leaned against the console, her glow dimmer but still alive. "You're hurt," she said quietly. John looked down and saw the blood on his sleeve. He hadn't even felt the cut in the chaos. "It's nothing," he muttered. But the truth was, he was getting weaker. She crossed the room, kneeling beside him. Her hands were warm, her touch light. The glow from her skin spread faintly into his arm. The pain eased, and the bleeding slowed. "What was that?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Half-bloods can heal. If we share energy," her voice was soft, but there was a tired edge to it. "You're giving me your strength," John said. She nodded. "And I will take yours if I need it." The words sounded strange, but her eyes held no threat, only a quiet truth. They moved to the far side of the chamber. There was an old cot in the corner, half buried under dust. John pulled it free, shaking it out. The metal creaked under their weight as they sat. "It will be cold tonight," she said. John glanced at her, then at the single blanket. He didn't argue when she lay down beside him. The glow from her skin was faint now, but enough to light her face in the dark. For a moment neither of them spoke. They listened to the soft drip of water somewhere deep in the tunnels. The war above them seemed far away, but they both knew it was only waiting. "Why me?" John asked finally. "Why my door?" She turned her head toward him. "Because you opened it," she said simply. John frowned, but she went on. "Most would have closed it. Most would have called them." She looked away again. "You didn't, her." Words settled between them like a quiet fire. John wanted to tell her he still didn't understand everything, but the truth was, he didn't need to. He knew enough. And enough was all he had ever acted on. The hum in the walls shifted slightly. John's eyes opened in the dim light. "Someone's here," he said. She sat up, her glow brightening from the far tunnel. Out. A faint sound echoed. Footsteps. But they were not heavy like the aliens. They were quick, light. A figure appeared in the tunnel mouth, wearing dark, worn armor marked with human symbols. The man's face was covered, but when he spoke, his voice was human. "We got your signal," he said behind him. More figures emerged, armed, tired but alive. Human resistance. She stood, her eyes shining. John felt something stir inside him. Pride, relief, and a strange sense of belonging. The leader of the group stepped forward. "We can't stay long," he said. "If they know where you are, they'll come with an army." She nodded. "Then we'll move before dawn." John looked at her. "We?" She met his gaze. "You think I'd leave the only man who didn't hand me over?" Her smile was faint but real. The humans began moving supplies into the chamber. Old weapons, packs, and strange devices that hummed faintly. The air filled with quiet conversation and the sound of metal being shifted. John sat on the cot watching them work above. The rain kept falling. Somewhere out there, the alien patrols were regrouping. Somewhere out there, the silver-skinned man was waiting, watching. Hours later, the chamber fell quiet again. The humans rested in the tunnels, taking turns on watch. John lay back on the cot, the blanket pulled over both of them. Her head rested lightly on his shoulder. For the first time since she had arrived at his door, her breathing was slow, and even the faint hum from her skin was the only sound. John closed his eyes, but the image of the alien leader's glowing blue eyes wouldn't leave his mind. They had survived this night, but he knew it was only the first. In the shadows beyond the ridge, far above the shelter, the silver-skinned alien stood in the rain. His hair streamed down his back like black water. His blue eyes glowed faintly. As he watched the hidden entrance, a slow smile spread across his face. "It begins," he whispered, and then he was gone.